Hello and welcome to this webinar, the New Leaf Data webinar. My name is Daniel Shanahan and I'm happy to be here. We are going to talk about item valuation today. Today is the second part, if you will, the second part of item valuation, and the first part of that webinar was on Monday. Monday we talked about the perpetual method for FIFO, LIFO, and moving average. And today we're going to talk about periodic, the periodic method. I'm somewhat new to webinaring, and so certainly a lot of kinks to get out on my end. I think it'll be a little bit better than Monday. I've done a little bit of homework and have some things set up, so I'm excited about that. There's about a 5-second delay from when I'm speaking here to when you can hear it. So I'm going to allow for that delay just for people to catch up or for me to see what's happening. To that end, on my left is a laptop. So I'm going to occasionally pop my head over there, take a look, and see how it is coming through. And just to make sure everything's going okay. I'll note that on Monday, I think it might be in my local service provider, I got bumped quite a bit and I had to restart the webinar a couple of times. So apologies in advance if that happens. I'd love to hear who you are and where you're from. So as you join the webinar, if you wouldn't mind, just drop in a note to say hello and tell me where you're from. And I think I have a place to see that here, and I don't know what I did with that. I'm looking to see where I can see the comments. I'm using Ecamm Live, which I like. But still learning. And there's a way for me to see comments on here, but I don't know where that is. Somehow I closed that window. Here, comments, reactions. There we go. Okay, great. Pascal's here again from Belgium. Welcome, Pascal. Pascal was on our Monday webinar. And let's see, FMP Dan 303 from Philadelphia, from the Philadelphia area. Dan Stein. Thanks, Dan. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Let's get started. I think it's going to be a small group, which is fine. I'm still starting out in the webinar space. So we have, it looks to me like we have about a few other people online too. So as you join the webinar, if you wouldn't mind dropping in just a note in the chat and let me know who you are and where you're from, that'd be great. Okay, so we're going to talk about item valuation. The issue is how do you know the cost of an item for accounting purposes? You don't have to know, and generally speaking, you don't have to know the exact cost, but you want some method for getting a cost estimation. And there are 7 ways to do that. 7 ways that I know of to do that. The first way, or the 7th way, however you want to say that, is by serialization. And that's when you receive an item and that item has a serial number. So if you buy 10 widgets and those are serialized, then you'll need to track each of those serials in 10 different line items. And then when you sell those, you would sell those in a line item so that you would serialize each line item. That's easy to track the cost. But when you don't have serialization, then you have the remaining 6. And those remaining 6 are divided into perpetual and periodic. And each has 3. There's 3 in each: FIFO, LIFO, and average. FIFO is first in, first out. LIFO is last in, first out. And average is the average of all of the items. it's my understanding that LIFO is only generally accepted in some countries. You could do it in the United States where I'm based, but not in every country. So that's what we're going to do. And then on the average, I'd say this about the average. I have, in my research on this, I have run into, it's called weighted average and moving average. I don't know the difference. I use those synonymously. If they're not, and I don't have an accounting background. I'm not an accountant. And if you know the difference between a weighted average and a moving average, please feel free to enlighten me in the chat. That does bring me to another point. I forgot to mention this previously. As I go over these files, and these files will be made available, and I'll mention how in just a few minutes. But as I go through these files, really what you want to do is you want to confirm this with your CPA accounting team or person. Okay, good. I'm going to periodically look over at the comments. Feel free to ask questions throughout. We'll have a Q&A period at the end, but there's just a few of us here, so feel free to mention things as we go. I see that Dan Stein says I wasn't here Monday, but also didn't sign in. That's totally fine. You're welcome to be here. Glad to have you here. Okay, let me do one more thing before we get into some screen sharing. And that's something that Patrick had mentioned. Patrick, it doesn't look like Patrick's with us right now, but Patrick was with us on Monday. And Patrick made a comment which was very good. I just had a live stream pause, so let me do this again. When I researched this topic, everybody, really most people are accountants or teachers of accounting who have videos up or who have written articles about it. They're all talking about purchases and they're all talking about sales. You may not want to use purchases and sales. You may want to use receipts and shipped. Those are the actual items that go out. In the accounting world or in the academic world, I think those things get conflated. And so everybody's using purchasing and sales. So that is, make sure you're using the right data set when you're doing that. Okay, let me go through the process then, and then I'll show you how this will be available a little bit later. So this is new. I'm pretty happy with this now. I learned a little bit more about eCam Live, so hopefully this is a better experience. What I want to do is, well, let me say this first. I picked a data set that it was important for me to pick a data set that I could check myself. I learned a bunch of these things, and I read articles and a lot of YouTube videos, but I wanted to have a process where I could check myself. And I found a series of videos from this guy who's a teacher. I don't know much about him. I think he teaches out in the western part of the United States. And his screen name is Professor Alldredge. I don't know this person, but he has a series of videos, and I think they're very good. I think he has, in my opinion, he has a real gift for teaching. So these are the videos that I've used. And I have links here. These links are now in the description of this video. Pascal says, much better, thanks. Thanks, Pascal. Those are helpful comments. And even if they're not good, I want to hear that too. Pascal had asked about these links, and so because of that comment or that email he had sent, I wanted to make sure that those were in the description, which they are. So here are the six: the perpetual, and then the periodic. And let me say, this is how I approach this. This is my very basic slideshow on this. what I wanted to do is I wanted to understand Professor Alldredge's videos. I wanted to understand the concepts he was getting at. And then once I did that, I translated that concept into a spreadsheet. I think probably for most database developers, I think almost certainly for FileMaker developers, it's a short step between translating a spreadsheet to putting it into FileMaker. So I wanted to have that step in the middle. So that's what I did, and we'll look at that spreadsheet. Because I think it's important to see. So what we'll do first is we'll take a quick look at one of Professor Alldredge's videos, take a look at that in the spreadsheet, and then once I understood that, then I moved it into FileMaker. On this, we may be able to see all FIFO, LIFO, and moving average here, but we'll just take a look at and see if I can adjust that. There, hopefully that works. So I'm not going to play the video of his video, but I want to note that he has this data set. He has the same data set, and he does 6 videos using the same data set. That was great because it was just easy to check my numbers. In the periodic, so he has the purchases and the sales at the top, and then he totals those out at the bottom. He has so this is different than the perpetual. In the perpetual, he included the data in a chronological order. That does not need to happen for the periodic process. In the periodic process, he has the data set in the purchases, which he totals these out. And then below that, he has less cost of goods sold. I have a real problem with some of the accounting terms. It's not clear to me. In my mind, the cost of goods sold would be a monetary value, and I would call this the number or the value or the units sold, something like that. But in his video, I think it's lumped in this generic term. So he has 5,200, a negative 5,200. He gets that by adding up the sales. Sales are at the top here. So 600 plus 16 plus 1,600 plus 1,000. All of this row equals 5,200. That's how he knows what he has sold. That leaves his ending inventory with 1,300. Now he's going to solve for what I would call the cost of goods sold, the actual monetary value, and what is the value of the ending inventory. And he's going to do that in this video based on FIFO, in another video based on LIFO, last in, first out, and then in the third video, he'll do it in moving average. Let me go over here and scrub and show where he okay, so here we have a couple of question marks at the bottom. At this point in the video, he's telling the user, I think he's making this for students, and he's telling the students what they're solving for. And now he has this section at the bottom. I really like this part. He really explained it so well. Now he's got this worksheet, this space at the worksheet, where he's going to say, we need to, of this 5,200, what was the cost for each? And the cost is going to vary. So he grabs the 800 and zeroes that out, and he does that throughout. So you could just see, I'll scrub through here, and you could see he's working this out where he's grabbing all the number he needs until he gets to 5,200. And that's how he's going to solve for the number, and then he adds that up. That step-by-step was golden for me, because now then I could do it in a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet, let me just back up a little bit here And let's see if I move this over here. In this spreadsheet will be available as well, and I'll tell you at the end of the webinar how and where that will be available. In the second tab of the spreadsheet, I have the data set that he has. This is the exact same data set that Professor Alldredge has, broken up into purchases and into sales. In this section here, this data set in time, the purchases and sales are in line in chronological order. This is less important for periodic, but useful for perpetual. Then down here, I have some of the givens. The item ID was a random thing. It was just something to help me remember that I needed an item ID. Let's see, and then we had some givens in here, and I put those in. We worked on the perpetual on Monday, and now we're in this periodic section. One thing to note is that based on the method you use, you're going to get different numbers. So for our purposes, you will have the same number of beginning inventory, the same number of sold units, the same number of ending units, but you will have a different number for the ending unit, the ending inventory value, and the cost of goods sold. Again, this is a conversation that you should have with your accountant. Over here I have a glossary of some of the terms that I use, and you can see that once you have access to this. I'm going to jump over here. Well, let me go to the perpetual FIFO quickly. The perpetual FIFO has a lot of steps, and each step was augmented with the previous step. And I show that because when we get to the periodic, the steps are greatly reduced. And here's how that works. We have at this step 1 section, we have all of our beginning inventory, and then we have the sales that we've made. And now we know, and we could summarize that. We have the numbers. Then when we go to step 2, all of that data is carried over, so we could see it further down here. So now the only thing that's added new to this is this periodic sales. And we got that periodic sale. We don't show it here, but we came up with that number, that 5,200, by same way that Professor Alldredge did, by going to this sales section and adding up the sales, the quantity for the sales. Then the third step, once we have that, now we have to find out the cost. We have to find out what the cost breakdown is for that 5,200, and then we have this section. Same thing that Professor Alldredge does here. That's his cost breakdown here. We're doing the same thing here in. Oops, I lost my spot. We're doing the same thing here in a spreadsheet. Now we have the cost breakdown. Now we have the summary, and then I put these numbers. Now it's easy for me to figure out the cost of goods sold and the ending inventory. I could do it in what do I have? Unit cost, unit quantity, and what do I have? Unit cost. So that's how he did it in the spreadsheet. Spreadsheet was very helpful for me to translate it from the video to the spreadsheet. Same happens for the LIFO, and then the weighted average. Periodic, just a real quick on the periodic, we have this process up here, and we'll move to the FileMaker video soon. Here's our initial quantity and our running count on these columns. But as we deduct from that 5,200, we're deducting from the top. We're deducting from the first in. And so the date matters here. And so we're going to go to the very earliest one in chronological order, and we're going to say, is 800 less than 52? Yes, so grab all of that 800. And then what's our balance from that? It's, 44? Is that right? And so we say, is 22 less than 44? And we say, yes. Okay, then grab all of that. And that's how we come up with this. And then these get zeroed out, and our running count is 0. In FIFO, it's just the opposite. Look at this column when we get to FIFO. In FIFO, we're doing the same thing, but we're starting from the last in, first out. And so we say, is 52, I think I did this back, is 500 less than 52? Yes. Okay, grab all of those. And then what's left? 47. So is 1800 less than 47? Yes. Okay, grab all of those. And that's how we create that. So that's how that works in the spreadsheet. Let's go. Let me jump back here. Let me jump back here to this view and just take a look at our comments. Pascal says it's easier to read much closer here, and it looks like he's going to leave us. Yeah, I know. I'm grateful that you came, Pascal, but I know that it's tricky to get everybody on the same. I know it's late for some people. Okay, now what I want to do, so that's the data set. That's how the spreadsheet worked. That was the process that I used from going from the video to the spreadsheet to the FileMaker. So let's look at FileMaker now. And let me, whoops. Let's see if okay. In FileMaker, these exercises, these files are built on a free inventory starter solution that I created called FM Inventory Starter. I'll say more about that, but that's the basis of where these are. And what we have here, we have a series of sales orders and we have a series of purchase orders. In the perpetual on Monday, if you haven't seen this, you could watch the replay video. It's up on my YouTube channel. In Monday on the perpetual, what we had was a trigger on this order field, and the trigger created a transaction, and then that process also created an item valuation log record. In that process, in the perpetual process, transactions and item valuation are very closely coupled, but I have two different files that do that. And then also tightly coupled with this is the quantity. But this file and the other periodic and perpetuals only deal with this topic at hand. And that's getting a little bit ahead of myself. But let me just say that we have a series of purchases, almost the same data set. Here's the data that we're working with, the SKU. This is the same data set as Professor Alldredge. So you can see that SKU, and those are the same numbers that he has. Let me go over to sales. Same thing with sales. Here's the SKU we're working with Professor Alldredge's data set, and here are those. I've added two other SKUs, and the reason I did that is I wanted to see what happens when you run a periodic item valuation. The premise is, I think, that you're going to do this at the end of the quarter, end of the fiscal year, maybe end of the month. In this example, we're using end of the month. And so you would be grabbing all of the items that had any transactions. That's a little bit different than the perpetual method, where the perpetual method happens at the time of the transaction. In the periodic, this could be easily run by a script trigger, or it could be run by a server. You could say well, I'll just leave it at that. You could automate this process to run at a particular time in a given year. So we have this data set here. We have also transactions for the data set. That's all set. Then the next thing we need is this item valuation. Now I'm going to run the script. My goal is I'm not going to walk through the script. Oops. I'm not going to walk through the script in the webinar. I will walk through the script in a future video, and the video will be part of a course that I have for this, and I'll say more about that at the end. But for the moment right now, I just want to run through the script. And let me say on the header, I've put in a bunch of these IDs. I sort of jammed in a bunch of the IDs. So those are there. There's really no, there's not enough space here, so the gutter is not great. This is not how I would have it in production. This is how I have it so that you can see the values in those fields. We'll have the date type. We'll have a T account, whether it's a debit or a credit. We'll have the ending inventory count. We'll have the initial quantity, the cost per unit, the ending inventory value, and the date it was zeroed out. Let me open up the script. So here's my script. Again, I'm not going to walk through it. You get a brief view of it here. And I'm just going to run that script. And what that script is going to do is that script is running over to the transactions, and it's looking for some transactions of a particular period. Right now that's hard-coded in the script. And then it's going to grab those and import those here. And now we have our values. This has, and now it's sorted by the SKU. So this gives you an idea about what that might look like if you run a quarter-end report or fiscal year-end report or something like that with multiple SKUs. What I want to do now is I want to just find our SKU here, this 7094, so it's easier to see. So I'm just going to enter into find mode 70904, and I want to constrain that found set. Here then, this should look very familiar to the spreadsheet. And I'm just going to look over my shoulder and check my laptop. We have our purchases here. We're getting bumped a little bit. We have this line right here in the middle of a credit. So what the script does is it says add them up. And that's what happens here, and create one item valuation record. That's what happens here. And now, same thing as in the spreadsheet, now we have this 5,200 that we know that we sold. And so we have to figure out the cost for those items. And so we do this first in, first out. We say grab those 800 at 320, and then grab that 2,200 at 310, and grab the 1,200 at 330, and then we just need the 1,000. And you could see how that deducts from this. This had an initial quantity of 800, and that got zeroed out. And here's our date that it got zeroed out. And then same thing, 2,200, that got zeroed out. 1,200, that got zeroed out. And then 1,800, we initially had 1,800. We only needed 1,000. That left 800. That can be used then in the future. That's how that works. Let me because we have some time, I want to open up my LIFO periodic. Let's see. I'll go in the LIFO periodic. On these files, I'll jump back to this again. On these files, the navigation doesn't work. That's intentional. There's a little navigation piece here. It's meant to give you an idea about what it could be, but then there's another way to plug in the navigation, and I'll say more about that. So I'm going to navigate in this LIFO. The data set is the same in the purchasing and the sales order, and now I'm just going to look at the transactions. I'll open those up. Here's our transactions. Same data set, 19 records, and we have several different SKUs. So that's all been done before the webinar, so that was all ready to go. And then in the item valuation, let me get rid of this. So I'll run this script, same thing, same script, and does the same thing. Goes over to the transactions, grabs the purchases. I need those in a line set, but then on the sales, I don't need the sales line by line. I want to aggregate those sales and find out how many were sold. And that's what's happening here on the credit side. And we can see the different SKUs. We're concerned with this set of SKUs. The other set of SKUs was just to give a general idea about what it would look like at the end of a quarter or month or something. Multiple SKUs. And anyways, here you could see that last in first out takes a different approach. It says here's the same number, we still sold 5,200, but now we have to, when we find out what the cost is, a breakdown of that cost of the 5,200, we start from the last and we work towards the beginning, and that's what's happening here. Okay, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Let me do one more. Let me do the moving average. I'll open that up. And moving average periodic. Again, the navigation is not hooked up on these files, and so I'll just go over to the transactions. 19 records, same data set. That looks good. And item valuation log. I'll open that up. And now let's jump over to, let's see if I have here we go. On this browser, on the weighted average here, I have it called weighted average. So it looks slightly different than our FIFO. Our FIFO and LIFO have these lines where we have to itemize the cost. So we have those at the bottom. But that's all getting averaged in the weighted average. It is the simplest method to use, is this periodic average. And so we come up with this average here, and that's what we need to do. Let's see how that's handled here. Let me hide that. And let's see, here's the moving average of the item valuation law. Okay, so we have the script run, and again, we have the different SKUs to give the idea about what would happen at the end of a quarter, for example, end of a month in this case. And then here we have our purchases, that's the same, and then we have this average. So we've taken all the sales and we've averaged that. And we did that in the script. The script took care of that, returned a value to us. So now we know that the average of these cost is $326. I think in the videos, Professor Alldredge recommends taking that out 4 or 5 places past the decimal. I'm not an accountant. I don't have that background, so those numbers are a little bit lost on me, but I think that's what I did to make sure that these numbers were close. And then we have a credit, and then we have our numbers here in the summary. The idea with these files is that once you have those numbers, you could do something else with those. In FileMaker, you can grab, if you get to the right record, you could grab that sub-summary and you can do something else with it. I don't know what you'd want to do with. I don't know how you'd want to deal with it, so I didn't create those. You'd want to get it into your accounting system somehow. You might want to export those numbers. You might want to put them in another table in FileMaker. You might want to have a link that goes right to your accounting system. So there's any number of things that you could do, but they are available. So that's one way that you can do a periodic item valuation using FIFO, first in, first out, using LIFO, last in, first out, and using the weighted average or the moving average. So how do you get these files? Let's go into that. Let's see. Let me hide this. These files will be part of a course that I have, and the course is part of the FileMaker, the FM Inventory Starter. FM Inventory Starter can be found at www.fminventorystarter.com. This is a free file. It's a base file. FM Inventory Starter is not an off-the-shelf solution. I've had to clarify that with a few people. It's meant to be a starter where people can get in and make it the way they want it to be. But it does not have all the components that you need for an inventory management solution. The idea is that you're going to build your inventory management solution on this. That base file is free, and then there's a course associated with that gives an overview about how to use it. And then there's a number of other courses. I use a universal data model for the orders. I have a course on how would you store your quantities if your quantities are in different warehouses, and within those different warehouses they could be at different locations. There's a course that explains how you do that, and some demo files, and there's videos with those too. There's transactions. I had mentioned that item valuation and transactions are intricate to each other, and there's a course on one way to handle FileMaker inventory transactions. And there's a navigation. As I mentioned, there's no navigation in any of these files. you would choose how you want to do your navigation, and I have several options here in the navigation course. The item valuation will be an additional course down here, and it will have 6 files available that are completely open that you can reverse engineer. Those are for the perpetual FIFO LIFO average and periodic FIFO LIFO average. So you'll have 6 files. You'll have videos on how those files work and some instruction on how those files work. That's the initial price on that is going to be $149, similar to the transactions. There is a discount. You get those free. The discount is free. And for that, you need this code. And where is that code? Excuse me while I grab that. Discount code. Let me put that discount code here. Save, and does it show? No. There it is. There's the item. So item value 01. Oh, I put it right across my face. Item value 01. That's the discount code that will be available when this shows. So obviously the course is not available at this point. When the course is available, you will be notified through email. If you're not on my email list, you need to get on my email list. And you could do that at, let me go back here. You could do that at this website. This is another website I have that has a series of articles on inventory management, building an inventory management in FileMaker. They're more random articles. They don't go in depth as courses do, but they're random articles and they're all free. And there's also, in addition to these, there's about 30, I think there's 33, I forget how many, about 33 articles. And then there are 13 demo files. These demo files are all free. I have a store on some things. I'm not going to say much about the store item. I'm going to redo that. Anyways, although it's a bad placement and it might be hard to find, this is where you need to be. You need to go down where it says join the newsletter. If you are not on my newsletter, you need to join my newsletter so that you will be notified when the item valuation course is available. Once the course is available, I will notify everybody on my newsletter list. And thank you very much. I could do that. So once the course is available, I'll notify everybody on my newsletter list, but it's only going to be for a limited time that you can get that for free. I'll send out that code again in the email address. So you'll have that in the email that I sent. I'll send the code. And then you'll have 2 weeks to get that discount. So to get the course for free. And then after that 2 weeks, it'll go into $149. That we are now at about 44 minutes past the hour. I feel like that was a lot of information, and so let me just sit back and see if there's any comments or any questions that I can help clarify. So if you have any comments or questions, this would be a great time to let me know. Okay, and I'm checking over here on my laptop. It looks like it's coming through okay. Okay, I don't see any questions coming through, which is fine. Oh, here's one. Here's one from Patrick. When do you expect the course to be available? When do you expect the course to be available? Oh, I wish you wouldn't have asked that question, Patrick. It's a great question, and my hope is that the course will be available sometime in mid-August. FileMaker's developer conference, and Patrick, you know this, I think you're going to it. FileMaker's developer conference is the first, I think, full week of August. So I am going to that. I'll be out of the office, so I'm not doing any work. You know, there's a whole week of work I'm not doing. So my hope is to have that done probably towards the end of August. To be honest with you, the biggest part of these courses is creating these demo files. After that, it's creating videos for the courses and writing text. So really the biggest part is done. Let's see. Oops. Here's another. Yeah, I should have done this. See if yeah, that's what I should have done to highlight Patrick's question. Let's see. So I can get that. Dan Stein says, much better than Monday. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Thank you for coming, and thank you for joining me in the webinar. I know they're rough. I've watched webinars. I've certainly learned a lot from webinars. No doubt about it. Mine are rough. And but my goal is to get better and better as time goes on. And I hope that the content is valuable to people who are interested in inventory management in the FileMaker platform. FileMaker is a great platform. And in fact, if FileMaker, everybody might know this, I don't know, but FileMaker just came out with a new release, 17.02. And so if you have any other questions, let's see, we have, let me just hang out for a few more minutes here. Well, I think that's about it for everybody. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. This will be available as a video soon after the webinar ends. If you haven't joined the newsletter, make sure you subscribe to the New Leaf Data newsletter. Subscribe to this channel and you'll get notified of future webinars and future videos. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.